I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for this Recruiting Service Top 3 Mentor of the Month. I'm Master Sergeant Roethlisberger. I'm here with Chief Beutler.
What's up, everyone?
You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, sir?
Good afternoon or good morning to you all. Just wanted to say thank you for inviting me to be the Mentor of the Month. It's an exciting opportunity. Sergeant Roethlisberger, Sergeant Williams with the camera. Appreciate you guys stepping up to do this. It's truly an honor to be able to do this for the top 3. I'm a big proponent of it. I'm so glad we had the opportunities that we do nowadays with the top 3 and the 5, 6, and so forth with our airmen out in the field. It's definitely a tool we wish we had back in the day. I'm sure a lot of us chiefs could believe the same thing. So with that said, a little bit about me. Chief Master Sergeant Mike Beutler, been in the Air Force for 20 or so, been in recruiting service. The other 10, my first 10 years in the Air Force were security forces. So that's a little bit about my background there. As far as recruiting goes, I started my recruiting career in the mountains of North Carolina, Silva office there. Did my 3.5 years as a recruiter and had the opportunity to become a flight chief right after that. So I left EA recruiting as a tech sergeant with a line number for master, went to be a flight chief in the great state of Mississippi. Jackson, Mississippi is what we covered down on as a flight. Had a great time out there for 3.5 years. Got selected for a senior trainer slot in DC at the 317th Recruiting Squadron, where I did line officer, flight chief, and senior trainer responsibilities, amongst a few other cool opportunities that I had. So I did that there, went on from there to make senior, and got selected for the 337th as the production superintendent there, Nighthawk Nation. So had a great opportunity there as well. From there, did my 2 years at 37 and went on to AFRS, where I had the great opportunity to learn how the mission runs behind the curtains, if you will. So that was a great opportunity. Was there for just 1 year, where I made chief and got this fantastic assignment as the officer of sessions superintendent of the 318th Recruiting Squadron, Spartan Nation. Really excited about the opportunity that I have here, and again, glad to be here. A little bit about myself, other than the assignments. I've been married to Amber, my wife, for 17 years. Has been a great part of my success in recruiting and in the Air Force. 2 wonderful children. My son Bryce is 14, daughter is 12. I consider them a big part of everything I do. As far as my career goes, without them and their support on things, it'd be awfully hard to be where I am today. So I owe them a lot of due respect for this. So, and that's me in a nutshell.
Well, again, sir, we appreciate you taking time out of your day for this. We have some questions prepared for you, but we also have some time at the end if any questions come in through the Facebook feed. So first question, what areas would you tell a new recruiter to focus on to build a solid foundation for success?
So I'm glad you asked that question. I think a lot of times with our professional development, we talk airman-centric or EPRs or 1206s, which is all important, writing abilities, but I think we also got to talk about our professional knowledge base, so more towards the recruiting base. So as far as a new recruiter and what they should really kind of try to master and so forth, I think the key components to me are obviously learning their 7 mission critical tasks. That is the foundation for what we do as recruiters and how we should live our lives as far as getting the mission done. I think if you follow those things, you will be ultimately successful, and you gotta continue to push through those things even in hard times. So what I would say is the 7 mission critical tasks, but I wanna kind of also say that not just the 7 mission critical tasks, but if I could shorten that a little bit, and I said, well, what's the main focus? What should you focus on as far as your success? And I found it, talking to HP, whether it be special warfare folks or EA folks, I found it to be 3 things. 3 things I think are very important, and that would be your depth management, your school programs, and your sales. I think those 3 things right there are key for recruiters' success out there and in the field. So debt management, school programs, and sales. I think if you master those three elements in those critical tasks, I think you'll be ultimately successful as a recruiter.
As a new recruiter coming in, what are some challenges you think they may face according to debt management?
Well, ultimately, I would say that, when I reflect back on being a new recruiter those years ago, and I know that was 12 years back or what have you, and so forth, and a lot of things have changed back then, but I can only go by what I know and what I remember. I think the key thing for new recruiters when it comes to debt management is don't look at debt management as just being debt members, just a box to check. I think that's the first thing. You gotta kick that stigma aside of, hey, I'm having a debt call. I just got to cross the T. I'm supposed to meet these guys once a month. I have no tie-in. I think you got to flip your mindset. And what I mean by that is, as a recruiter, you have to look at your debt program as more of like your airman. So if you're a staff sergeant, senior airman, or a tech sergeant out there in the field and you're a recruiter, don't look at them as, oh, I don't supervise anybody. How about let's practice our supervision skills, whether you've been one or not, and learn these people as these are your future airmen. Treat them as such. Treat them as your airmen. I think it's going to help you manage your debt better. I think it's going to help you hone some leadership skills when you get tasked to be a flight chief in the future or a supervisor. I think that is key. So one of the key things I think is honing your skills, treating them as airmen, learning your supervisory skills, having accountability with them right off the bat. I think as new recruiters, we are almost scared or handcuffed to show them that you're the boss, even because they're not getting paid, and they may not technically be in the Air Force at that time, but it is a great opportunity to kind of hold them accountable and tell them your standards, and you start that in the first process of the sales. So the debt program is debt management is so critical to that piece, and it continues to give you the customer service that they need, the service after sell, to build that trust and value with your applicants so that they can refer you later on to other people that are potentially interested in joining the Air Force. So I think those are the key elements of debt management for a new recruiter.
Good stuff, Chief. So when it comes to sales, besides the initial training, what are some ways that recruiters can enhance their sales skills? And as senior leaders, how can we help enhance our junior enlisted sales skills?
So I think I'm going to start with the second part of your question, which is the senior leaders, as far as how can we help our people understand sales better. So as a leader, and what I mean by that is maybe your flight chief level, maybe your senior trainer, even your pro soup to a certain extent, and whoever's in the process. I think you got to make it important to the people. So if you feel as a leader, the flight chief, that sales are important to you, inspect what you expect out of your people and make sure you monitor that. Because if you don't, just like anything else, it will decline that skill set. And so what I've seen in my time is the emphasis on sales and the importance of it. So as leaders, I think we got to start making sure that our airmen understand the importance of sales. And to me, sales is just communication, learning how to talk to people, to build relationships, to build the trust and value in our applicants, in us, so that we can be successful and recruit and make the mission that we need to. So starting with that, I think that is the basis of it. Maybe take a gander at your processes and your inspections. As young recruiters, I can speak for when I was a young recruiter, those that many years ago, your sales got beat up by the flight chief almost on every visit every month. So when you came in to do their office visit checklist, part of that process was how well did we learn our sales, which was back in those days PSS. And if you didn't know a step or a process with it, you didn't get beat up literally, but maybe QC'd and held accountable to learn how to do your craft, which is the sales process. So I think it starts there. The other piece of it is I always believe that flight chiefs are the trainer. They're number one trainer for the recruiter is the flight chief. But we oftentimes like to say, well, I didn't get enough training, or I didn't receive this or that. I think is NCOs, staff sergeants and tech sergeants, which is mostly our people, and when we get senior airmen, if that comes, I think we as leaders have got to step up and say, you know what can I learn on my own? So having the cognitive thought process on taking self-learn to another level is going to be important as well. So accountability in yourself and learning your own craft, because your flight chief typically is not going to be with you on a day-to-day basis. The once a month visit or once a quarter visit is not going to be enough to learn your craft when you have to make mission within the first few months you're there. So responsibility as airmen, as new recruiters, is key to the sales process and learning, and then the flight chief and the leadership style of making it important to the people. Again, we're coming from an era where there are some folks that didn't have to struggle in making mission, and so they were never pushed. So when they go up into the ranks, you may not think that sales are important, but I can assure you it is, and that's one of the reasons why people struggle out there on the bag. So with that said, that's what I would do.
Okay, very good, Chief. So the third thing you brought up was school programs. So what do you believe to be the most important components of setting up successful school programs?
So when we're talking about school programs and that DSS process, the biggest thing is you don't just cover the square or check the box. Don't just be a surface level thinker when it comes to your school programs. And that big part of that, we hit on that earlier, and that's planning. Too many oftentimes we have folks that think that because they put it in their planning guide that they're going to visit, let's just say Smith High School, that's enough for them to cover the square on I planned a school visit. So you show up to the school visit, you get to the front door, and they're like, we ain't expecting you here. So your school visit may be least effective that way. So I think a lot of our critical tasks kind of flow into each other, but planning piece of the school programs is going to be key. What do I plan to offer the school? Me coming out and giving an Air Force briefing sometimes works in some schools. Some schools it's a little bit harder to get in. So what I would do, and to shorten what I'm trying to get at, is when it comes to school programs, we have to find partnerships and relationships with the schools on what we can do to help them. Too many times we're just asking for what they can do for us, and a lot of times that works. But to be effective in your school program, I think you have to offer something, a service. And when we think about that, think about the service you can offer. So for instance, let's just play a hypothetical game here. If they have a criminal justice class in your school programs, and if you see their electives and things of that nature, you might find that as a security forces member, you might be able to come in there and teach them a little bit about law enforcement and give them that perspective. That way you're visible in front of the leads, because that's what we need to get in front of, right? We need to get in front of the leads. And sometimes that's easier said than done, and I found that the most effective visits are the ones where we offer something. And that could be something that we find off of CBTs. It could be, teaching people how to stay away from substance abuse or what have you. We have those kinds of programs we can build into our own school programs and build our own slides and show folks the importance and what we have to offer for a school instead of just being the recruiter in the field. So I think that's number one. Then the other thing is, as a new recruiter, don't just accept what happened before you as this is the way it is. And what I mean by that is, you come into an office and they say, well, this school is a P3. It's a priority 3 school. You don't have to visit it but once a year or whatnot. Don't trust that. Make sure you do your own investigation with the school to see, how many people join from that school. How far away from you is it? Because distance doesn't necessarily mean it's not a bad school. Some people will make it this school is not worth visiting because it's 2 hours away. Well, that might be one where you go in, you get 3 or 4 leads that want to join. So don't just trust that the last person had it right. In fact, a lot of times from my experience, they've had it wrong.
Yeah.
They've done it to make it easier on them. That will set you up for quick failure if you're not involved in that. So make sure your school programs are set up and in place. You have an effective plan, a strategic plan to go into your schools and really do well. So that's what I would say.
That's some great insight, Chief. So that moves us on to our next question. What are some common traits you find in successful recruiters?
So what I find as far as common traits with successful recruiters are the same common traits that I find in successful airmen everywhere. And everybody has their own spin on what does success look like. So even if you're a recruiter or a CST or a first sergeant or whatever it is that we're doing, or a chief or whatever it is that we're doing, I think there's three other things that are very important to be successful as a recruiter, because we're talking about recruiter-centric stuff here, but as a person in general, and that is PEW, and that's passion, enthusiasm, and work ethic. And if you couple that with the debt management, the school programs, and sales, I think you're going to be outstanding in your recruiting abilities. So going back, passion, enthusiasm, and work ethic. I think those are the three things that we got to do to be successful as airmen and as recruiters, as far as attitude and how we do things that we can control. All three of those. So I think that's important.
When it comes to passion, with the DSD process, do you see the same amount of passion with the new recruiters coming in as back when it was all volunteer force, like when you and I joined?
So there's been a lot of arguments and discussions about that over the past few years about DSD and all volunteer and so forth. And I think there's good and bad to each one. And why I say that is this. When I think back to when we had all volunteers, certainly there were a couple of folks, even on my flight as an enlisted sessions recruiter, that maybe shouldn't have been recruiters, and they were all volunteers. So I think there's always going to be some that get through the cracks that may not be recruiters. And DSD is supposed to prevent that. Heck, all volunteer force was supposed to prevent that as well. So I really think what it all boils down to is we can point fingers at each other all day long on each area, but I think in my opinion, it's really about how we lead our airmen. So if I have a person coming in and they're DSD, I shouldn't say, man, they're DSD. How about take a deeper look and see what's causing the issues at hand? Is it your leadership style? How can we get them to perform? How do we teach them the right and the wrongs and the do's and the don'ts? How do we become leaders and lead these folks through the fire? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. The leadership piece of that, when it comes to passion for your folks, they will be a figment of you, a piece of you. So if you don't have passion as a flight chief or as a leader, and you're talking to a brand new DSD recruiter, they're gonna maybe buy into the same methods and thought processes as you do. So what I would say is, when as a pro super, I remember folks coming into the door and they were very passionate about what they were doing. They fit the bill, and something happened between then and the time they 6 months down the road or a year where they didn't like what they were doing. I think you have to find passion in what you're doing. So a lot of folks want to just circle it and say, well, recruiting is this, or recruiting's the issue. Well, we all joined the Air Force for a reason, and we've all had opportunities to separate from the Air Force, mostly probably before we even became DSD recruiters. So the big picture is we work for the Air Force, and being a great airman and taking care of our airmen, let's define what our mission is. So you can go into a bunch of different areas, but I would say we got to figure out how to get people motivated by their mission, and if that's to put young men and women in blue, whether it be officer, special warfare, enlisted opportunities, whatever those opportunities are to help our mission as the Air Force, I think you got to focus on that and not make it about, it's recruiting, or it's this, or it's that. Let's make it about being an airman in the United States Air Force and how much of a privilege that is. And then we'll start getting into the passion and how we lead people. So I think that's the critical part of passion when it comes to our people And I think it's all about how we lead them, no matter if we're volunteer or DSD.
Good stuff, Chief. So the second thing you hit on was enthusiasm. You've been recruiting over 10 years, so how do you still wake up with the same amount of enthusiasm as you did when you were a brand new recruiter?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. People always say, man, you always smile all the time. You know, Chief, you always look like you're in a good mood. You always look like this. You always look like that. And there's a reason for that. And I learned at a young age as a recruiter specifically, when you get your butt kicked out there and what I mean by that is you're having a rough day or you didn't make your mission, especially young in the process, your first 6 months out there, life is tough. I'm sure you can attribute, I don't know your numbers from back then, but maybe your first 6 months, I know mine was pretty rough. Learning the business. So again, going back to if I'm trying to sell you a car or a house or anything, if I look like I'm eating a turd hot dog, for example, and I look sad or what have you, a lot of folks aren't going to want to buy what you're selling, no matter how good you are in it. So I think a part of your sales process and part of our DNA is being positive. Chief Mako had a great saying that I picked up from him down there at AFRS, and his saying is, "Be positive." Our blood type is always be positive. No matter what adversity you're facing, if you take that mindset of having a positive mindset and being positive all the time, you can get through a lot of hurdles when you're down. And certainly we've all been down at some point in our careers. It's going to happen. It's called life and how we battle through those. And so developing a mindset, a positive mindset, is what we got to keep it going. Focus on the things you can control, not about the things you can't control, and you'll find that you'll have more success. With that being said, I used to think as a person going through recruiting school, I thought our chant was kind of, what's this about? It's kind of corny at first. Yeah. I think a lot of people think that. But the more you go through recruiting school and you face some challenges there, you'll figure out quickly that, hey man, this enthusiasm chant, it's going to make my blood flow a little bit more. It's going to give me some positivity. And I love the chant because it really keeps you pumped up, especially during times where you might have some boring briefings and you're about to fall asleep, or is it that time where you didn't make mission? We're going to step up our game next month and get that mission again. I think that's key. We got to be enthusiastic. We got to flip the cold side of the pillow over, so that we wake up on a new day and new hour, new month, what have you, and keep it moving. Because attitude is everything. I firmly believe that. And if you have a great attitude, you can kind of battle through most things in life, and especially in recruiting. That's why I believe in enthusiasm. That's how I try to stay enthusiastic about everything I do. And trust me, we all have been through things where, and continue. It's just life. It didn't stop when you're a master sergeant, a senior master sergeant, or a chief. You're gonna battle things, and it's all about growing and learning and getting better. And having a great attitude is where it starts, and that starts with enthusiasm.
Yeah. So we're about to move on to our final question. After that, we'll see if there's any questions that they have from the field. So what type of work ethic do you see in successful recruiters, and how can we instill that in our subordinates?
So for me, I think a relentless work ethic, and what that means to me is, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're working from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 at night every day of the week. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about when it comes to work ethic is, we have a mission to obtain, right? So the mission cannot fail. That's the mindset we got to have. So when it comes to, for instance, an applicant that's ready to move out and join, whether it be whatever they're doing, in any one of our session programs. I think when we look at it from an internal perspective and we say, man, I am not making my mission, whether it be 100% or my 2 for the month or whatever it might be, we have to have a sense of urgency to get that done. So instead of closing the deal today and getting that paperwork and that documentation ready for that person to move on to the MEPS and join the next week, we sit on it for another week. There's no sense of urgency. And so I think the sense of urgency, the work ethic kind of coincide with each other. And I think that's part of the issue when we're talking about the work ethic. As far as that goes, the no quit, I got to get this done. Then the other thing is, meeting mission 100% is just the standard.
Yeah.
You know, if my boss asks me, hey, you know what, meeting the standard's great, but I need you to go get me another one because this flight needs to make mission, or the squadron, or the group, or AFRS, we need to be all in, have an all-in mentality, all gas, no brakes mentality in getting to that mission and exceeding it. Because that's what it's all about at the end of the day, is excellence in all we do. You can tie anything we do in our core values as recruiters in the Air Force, because we are airmen. So tie that into your mission, and how do you see that being fit, and going from there. With that being said, work ethic doesn't just stop in the office. Okay, this is going to surprise some people, I think. You know, it's a work ethic to get your job done and be sufficient, and take care of the mission. But the other piece about work ethic is, what is your work ethic when it comes to your family, right?
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is, you know, all gas, no brakes towards the mission. And what if we had an all gas, no brakes towards our family members? So yeah, you know, I think Chief Lee, Command Chief, has a great way she explains this, and I can't explain it as good as she can, but she talks about work-life flexibility, you know, because you can't give 100% to the mission and to your family. That doesn't add up, right? You can't give 50-50 because one of them are going to fail. So I think you got to find your flexibility, as the chief says, and apply your all gas, no brakes to each. So when you know that 3 days a week you're going to have to work 12 hours, so that Thursday you can take off to spend time and go to your daughter's dance, go to their football game, that might be what you got to do to be all in and get the mission done, and also take care of your family. Because you can't go 50-50, you can't go 100 on each, because that don't add up. But I certainly can give it all gas, no brakes when it comes to the family, when I'm trying to take care of business, taking care of mama at home or whoever. You know, we got to make sure that we have that work-life balance, and I think that's key with your work ethic. Not just work. We're talking work primarily, but your family aspect as well.
That's a great perspective, Chief. Did we get any additional questions from the field? Anyone have anything for us? Good. Any final words, Chief?
No. You know, if you got questions or anything, I'm sure someone will let me know later on, or what have you. Just let me know, and I'll be glad to answer them. I'm always available. Look me up on the Global or whatnot, and we can help you out with whatever we need. I'm always available for anything. I would say with the final thoughts before we head out of here is just remember what we're here for, and that's to be great airmen. And whether you're recruiting, whether you're CST, or whether you're a first sergeant, whether you're a chief, or whatever you're doing out there, let's give it our all and practice our core values the right way, and be all in for the mission and take care of our people. As leaders, and specifically at the tactical level, at the flight chief level, I think we got to be more than just the boss. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Don't be just the boss. I come in at 8 and I leave at 3, and I don't talk to my people if they are in need. You have to build a relationship with your people to understand that if they need anything, or they have anything going on, that they feel free to call you, because you still have to build that trust and value with your own people, and that takes time. So be available, folks. Be available for your people. And it doesn't just start at the flight chief. Let's talk about our wingmen. Okay? Your responsibility is to be a great wingman to your own flight mates. Okay? Or not your flight mates. Maybe it's another flight. Be a great wingman. Take care of each other. We're all in here. We're all battling things, whether it be a resiliency matter or a work-life battle or what have you. Let's be great wingmen to each other. Try to help each other out, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is being a great airman, getting the mission done, and taking care of our friends and family as we need. And I'll leave you with that.
Well, thank you again, Chief, and I'd like to thank you all for participating in this Recruiting Service Top 3 Mentor of the Month meeting.